Hello, everyone. Welcome to LinkedIn's Stronger Show. It is Tuesday afternoon in the United States, in the Midwest, in Bloomington, Indiana. And as we get ready to talk about pitch perfection, not the pitch of your voice, but pitching ideas, pitching your ideas to get money, to get approval, to get anything that you need. We're going to bring in our guest in just a little bit. But as you get started with us, I'd love for you to tell me where you're coming in from and to do a hashtag stronger on the link, because we will do a giveaway. We have new prizes. We have our new Stronger gear, these cool notebooks where you can write down all your brilliant ideas. So go ahead and put in your hashtag stronger, and also do tell us where you're coming in. This month, if you follow me on the LinkedIn platform, you know that I tether content from the newsletter called Stronger with always the guest and the topic of discussion for each month's LinkedIn Live that we have. And this month, I wanted to talk about pitching ideas and making them as perfect as you can, not from a content standpoint, because all of your ideas would be different, but from the nonverbals that you bring into the room as you get started. So I wrote a little bit about, and maybe we can link in the newsletter content, or we can put it in later in the comments. I talked about eye contact with everyone in the room. If that's a problem, we also share and say, here are ways that you can work on that. Or I talk about gestures. We can be much more projecting, we can project our energy, and we can be more expressive and come across more authentic when we use gestures that attach more, connect to how we communicate. And I have some tips on how to work on improving your gestures. I also talk about stance. I talk about projection of energy even as you walk into the room, and ways you can work on that. I'm going to take a little pause here. I'm seeing people coming in from Bloomington, Indiana. Dana, thank you. Natasha from Texas. We've got someone from Arkansas. Fantastic. And Evangelia, we were just talking earlier today, coming in from Athens, Greece, East Tennessee. And as you always, if you follow, there's lots of coverage around the globe, which makes me really happy. And remember, hashtag stronger. So another thing that I talked about in the newsletter is making sure that as soon as you get the attention of your audience, to be able to explain what it is that you talk about, anywhere from tell me a little bit about your research, or tell me about your idea, or what are you doing with this money, or why is this a problem? Once you make a statement, sort of the header of what you say, you always want to use magical words, as I name them in the newsletter, that connect your idea to the example that the audience would relate to. For example, anytime that you've had this problem, imagine if there was this type of a solution. So using those magical words and practicing on how to do that. In the newsletter, I even gave you prompts where you can use AI to help yourself think through some of these ideas, because quite often we need AI to help us be more creative. So as we talk about this, Beijing, Keisha, pleasure to have you here today. So as we talk about making our pitch perfect on the front end of how we prepare and how we project our energy and our, I would say, trust towards others, that others feel towards us, and we project our competence and our warmth and our personality, we want to be sure and hear and connect with people that are doing this all the time. You may know I teach in the academic sector. I teach MBA students, undergrads, but I wanted to reach out and find someone who was in the trenches, training founders that were raising capital everywhere around. Melina Ragland from New York City. I have a story about you a little later. So my guest today is Emma Rees. It's somebody really that I tracked down on LinkedIn, and I made a proud and brave ask to say, hey, do you want to come on the show? I don't know where to begin with Emma, because she's done so much. She has started companies. She has raised capital, 5 million to date. And today I asked her, how much do the people that you coach raise? She's like, I need to calculate that. The latest person that she worked with raised 2.5 million. She's received the Melinda Gates Award. She's an absolute rock star. And she started in the trenches learning how to do this. And we're going to hear her story. So, Shelby, let's bring in Emma, who comes to us, as you can see in her background, not Australia, that's her homeland. She's coming in hot in the evening of Barcelona, Spain. Emma, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, Tatiana, you're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Always happy to talk about how everyone can pitch stronger and make sure you get your objective of what you're trying to achieve from pitching better.
Right. So tell us a little bit about, before I start with my questions and trying to guide us, tell us your story. You started, you are a native of Australia, but you were working and living in London and doing some of your funding, opening companies. It was before tech was even around, right? And you were coming up with a platform that helped people get services.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first business actually started back in Australia. So I started my career at the age of 16 cutting hair,
Wow.
which I think is really where I started picking up the nuances of how people would move, body language, what words they would say. I don't think I really knew it at the time, but I was literally being immersed into, how people give you nonverbal cues.
Well, they have to, if I can pause you,
Yeah.
hairdressers are controlling your image. They have to make them, you would have to make me trust you immediately so then that I could let you mess with my look. You talk about immediate pitch perfection there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that level of trust as well. Like I think it was part therapist, part hairdresser, part, giving women or men that confidence as they stepped out into the world. So I had a hairdressing salon, so bricks and mortar. There was no tech involved. I sold that business and moved to London when I was 23, so 2003. And I wanted to go to university and I wanted to find a way to sort of, not be working in a salon and tied to a salon every day. And I met a web developer and we built a platform to help hair, makeup, nails, massage therapists come into homes, hotels, business events or Christmas parties for corporates. So we very quickly sort of ended up with B2B, but being able to put a tech wrapper around what we were doing enabled both, my picking and choosing and all the people that worked for us all of a sudden weren't stuck in a, 9 to 6 store. They could pick and choose where they wanted to work.
Well, can I just say this was like the Uber for all those services in 2003 before it existed.
Pre-iPhone, yeah.
In a pre-iPhone in a city like London. So it was all computer-based.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All booked on the desktop. We had to build the entire calendar and we would use Sage Pay. Like even the payment method was like really clunky. But I think what that really did for me is help me realize that thinking outside the box. And I think that change happened to me where all of a sudden I was in a new city. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And just with that curiosity of there's a better way to do this.
Right. And that's when you went asking for funding for the first time. And then
yeah. Yeah. Well, actually the first, so we bootstrapped that completely. But we did have to partner with people. And actually that's where I was first sort of pitching for business. I was still relatively young. You could tell this, I was still quite inexperienced with how I was sort of able to get my ask across. And I often would I'd rush through the presentation at the end because I didn't want to ask for the thing that I was asking for.
Right.
And I think that's a thing that, maybe a lot of people struggle with. Like the presentation was polished, like we were talking about what we could do, but that actual ask to, should we continue this conversation or would you like to use our services was, it took a lot of confidence to build that.
And courage to build that, because you have to believe in it. The newsletter that I wrote about pitch perfection, I note or I reference a book by Sunil Gupta called Backable. I have it here. I'm not pitching it and I'm not giving it away, but he talks a lot about the person who's on the pitching end really believing in what they are selling, because that is evident in the nonverbals and the level of confidence and how they walk into the room And it depends on their authentic self. You can't prescribe that. I would say if there's a formula, it probably has to do with preparation, all the things you're going to talk about, with preparation, with having all your data, having all your numbers, having practiced in what you're saying, having walked into the room before. But I wanted to start with the first question. If you're jumping in, by the way, just now, tell us where you're from. Someone is here from Nigeria as well. Abbas, thank you for joining us. Yes, Miracle from Nigeria. And also do #stronger for the giveaway. I wrote down, I wanted you to tell us first, what helps a founder stand out? You work now, you coach and train founders back in the days where you had created the computer-based database that could connect people needing a service with the people offering it. Now where people walk into a virtual room, a physical room, what helps them stand out, Emma?
So I think the biggest thing for me, and in my most recent business with Deployed, and I talk about this a lot on LinkedIn. So I tracked all of my data of how many meetings I would have and the outreach. So when I was first pitching for money, I sent 196 messages, and I think I got around sort of 130 no's straight off the bat, like
wow,
immediately from the email. So my confidence was already a bit like, oh my goodness, is there something wrong? Is this not the right narrative? So when I did get the ones that said yes, going into that room and being confident, like I had prepared and over prepared the delivery of what I was going to deliver, because personally for me, that meant I could go in and feel that, if I was in a high stress environment where someone's throwing questions at me, I'd already practiced those. So I wasn't having to make my cognitive load work overtime to think of the right response. I was hoping that muscle memory would serve me well, and I would just know my responses as I was being asked them. But I think to your specific question about standing out, I never walked into a room and pitched without knowing who my audience was, whether I had looked at them on social media, I'd looked at them on LinkedIn, did they have a Substack? Like, what are they writing about? Like, is there a way that I can quickly build rapport with this person?
I love that.
And also maybe there's some things that I want to make sure I avoid. Is there anything political in there? Is there anything that I don't want to kind of, go down a rabbit hole with? So know your audience. And that also really humanized them for me as well. So instead of going in thinking that this person was like some powerful person at a company that had the decision to write a check for my business, actually, they were still a human being and they were writing about topics on LinkedIn and other mediums.
So it helps you build rapport. Sorry to interrupt you, but
jump on in.
Would you say, I read the article that you wrote about that topic. That was fantastic. I'd love to ask you more questions, or your latest blog was intriguing. Do you show that you've done this kind of homework, or does it sound like you're behind the scenes? How much do you
That's a great question. Not always. If there's a lot of time constraints, I'll have to dig this out for you afterwards, but I found a study that talked about rapport building for sales. And if you're in a constrained time and you're deliberately trying to build rapport, like when you get a salesperson on the call and they're trying to build rapport with you, you don't know this person yet. So you kind of just want to get them off. If we were in a time constrained environment, like I had 25 minutes to pitch or 10 minutes to stand on stage and pitch, I often wouldn't pull that out. I would use that as my own internal confidence. But if there was time, I would typically ask some questions. Oh, I see that you write on LinkedIn, or I see that you're writing on Substack, and what's your favorite, way to get motivated about your topics, or sitting down and write. So it was more of a, yes, I've read this, but I'm going to ask you a question so you can, ultimately we all love talking about ourselves.
Right. It's in a way you're throwing the hook and then they can talk about that. Yes, absolutely. So back to where you were talking about being super uber prepared. The founders that you work with, do you sit down and you do dry run sessions of saying, okay, let's go through the 3-5 minutes and let's do a round fire of questions that you might get, role playing?
Yeah, and role playing is one of the most fabulous ways to do it. And I recommend with founders as well, if you don't have someone to do it with you, either use any of the AI tools, right, whether it's ChatGPT, question me on, here's my pitch deck, you're an investor, give me questions on this topic in each category, like product market fit, pricing model, et cetera, et cetera.
Analysis, all of that.
And then record yourself. So I find listening, I mean, it's always a bit cringe, right, when you're watching yourself back, but when you're watching and listening, you're like, oh, did I articulate that the way I wanted to, or did I ramble? Or I think one of the biggest problems that I have to sort of nip in the bud with founders that I work with, and I went through this process myself, is less is more. Because when you're really excited to talk about your business and someone's asked a question and you know so much about it, you want to offload all this knowledge, but sometimes less is more, and then waiting for another question.
Yes. And you have to have the main theme. Is it profitability? Is it whatever it gives back to the community, whatever it is, hitting that again and again. So when you leave the room, they think that idea is X. If the theme is there, you've used it again and again. So you practice. We've talked in other stronger episodes about using AI. And even there are AI tools that can give you feedback just on the recording. You're not watching it on your own, which I think are only going to get better and more helpful. Can we talk a little bit about nonverbals? Quite often, what is in the backdrop of your virtual space, or how you dress or how you walk in the physical space. Do you adapt that based on your audience? Do you stay true and authentic to who you are? Do you pay attention to those nonverbals? And can you tell any war stories of where they've clashed?
Yes to all of that. I would love to tell you I didn't care about those things, but actually I did. And there were so many times in the beginning where I would overthink it. I remember being on the Underground. This was an in-person meeting, and I was going with my male co-founder, and I had packed red lipstick in my bag. And as I'm on the metro, I'm like going, should I do this? Should I not do it? And he looks over to me and he goes, what's wrong? And I'm like, well, it's quite red. I don't know. Is this going to give the right signals, or maybe I shouldn't? What do you think? And he kind of looks back to me and he goes, I wouldn't even think about it. Why are you even thinking about this? And I'm like, well, that's so interesting. You don't think about this, because I'm thinking about whether this makes me look, is it too sexy, less professional? Does it make me memorable? And I'm going over and over on this.
Right. And he's like,
and actually I bit the bullet, and then I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to do it and see whether there's a reaction, because I wanted to wear it that day. And then I was second guessing myself.
Right. It made you feel more powerful?
It totally did.
Confidence. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think he would say red tie, blue tie, red tie, blue tie. You're right. We overthink things as much quite often. When you talk about preparation, have you often walked in a room where you haven't heard people speak before? It's hard to understand them. Maybe they're soft-spoken, maybe they're fast-speaking. You've traveled all over the world. How do you prepare for something like that? Maybe the technology is not very good. How do you, adjust to that? Or maybe not show that it's stressful?
Yeah. I mean, I think as a founder, particularly when you're pitching, because you will get things that are just left field that you didn't expect. And I think working on that poker face, like a smile and I've received this, and teaching yourself to pause, like it always feels so much longer than it is in the moment. But just even swallowing, taking a breath, giving yourself time to think about it and coming back. I think the point you make around it being difficult to hear, I've sometimes been like that, where it's been like a Dragon's Den style, and you're pitching on stage, you've got like 3 minutes to pitch 3 questions, and it's noisy in the background. I've sometimes struggled to hear, and I've in 2 responses, one dragon asked me something and I just responded to what I thought he said, and he hadn't asked me that. So I wish I'd actually come back in and ask for clarification, because I think there's nothing more powerful than to go, I'm really sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
And you're also taking time to compose yourself, and
That's
you're slowing
a good way
down
to look in the file folder. And for in the US, in the show, Dragon's Den is the equivalent of Shark Tank. I always find if you are in a virtual call, you get a question, You take a sip from your water, and then that allows you to slow it down a little bit. And taking the time to record yourself that you mentioned earlier allows you to see if you seem anxious, nervous, or ready to jump in. Quite often I see founders that have not practiced that Q&A, and they don't even allow the person to finish their question, or they're answering the wrong question without asking for the clarification, as you said. If you are joining us, please jump in and ask any questions that you may have of an idea that you've pitched. Maybe you're not asking for money, you're asking for approval, or you're asking for a job, or you are asking or in behalf of your team or your department. We talked a little bit about handling rejection, Emma, and you said what, 139?
Yeah, about that.
First emails, right? And I don't think now you would even get anything back. In today's world, it's the ghosting effect, right? You send it out and it goes in the cosmos and you never hear anything. So that's assumed to be a no. Talk to me about your mindset, or maybe before the no happens on email, when it happens in person. Maybe our friends here joining us are not going to be on a stage with 3 dragons or 3 sharks asking them. Maybe they're in a conference table, maybe they're in a Zoom call, and they get the I'm out, that's a no. How do you manage that externally and internally?
And it is, honestly, I just want to share, it's still always really difficult having the no's, and you've really hit home there with it is a mindset change. I had an incredible founder who was a little bit ahead of my journey when I first started pitching, and I had shared with her that I'd got all these no's back. And she said to me, what if I told you that you had to have about 200 meetings or 150 meetings, I can't remember the exact number now, no's before you got a yes? And she said, all of a sudden you're going to think that it's like a game. You're like, great, I've clocked another no. Great, I've clocked another no. I'm one step closer. And it genuinely works, because I think there's a balance. Okay. I found that we were getting a lot of, and we were doing many sort of one-on-one face-to-face pitches as well. Some people, when they were saying no, would also give us feedback on the business. And when we started to collate a few no's that were giving us a no with feedback on, I don't know, our go-to-market strategy or our growth expansion strategy, that we actually started saying, okay, let's strip the ego out of this. If we've had more than 2 of the same feedback, is there truth in that? Do we need to go back and look at our business model? Or is it just kind of generic feedback they're giving us? Right. And I think I definitely, that was a good moment for us to actually look back under the hood again. Or it was maybe in the narrative, like how I was sharing our steps and our approach to that maybe wasn't coming off as clearly as I wanted it to.
That's really interesting. So collecting the data, going back, being receptive and transparent, and I would say humble enough to say they have a point. There's some theme to what we're hearing, and we'll go back and look at it. I see Shelby here that is with us today asking, how do you communicate pricing in a tactful way? It seems to me that pricing may seem, and a lot of our friends here who may be independent contractors, and they say, this thing is going to cost you X, or this presentation is going to be this price. Communicating pricing in a tactful way, but also in a prideful way, that it doesn't come across as you don't believe. Remember what we talked about from Backable, you have to believe in what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. And if you believe that there's value in what you're offering, or whether it's you're asking for a specific investment amount, if it's founders that are listening that are wanting to put their ask out there, honestly, it comes down to practice, because it only feels awkward if you don't do it a lot on calls and then you shy away from it, or it's like the last page in the deck where you're like, oh, I just want to skip past this bit. Get out and practice it, because the more you say it, and I agree with you, believing it and knowing that there is value in what you're offering, you will have already done your benchmarking against your pricing and know what your competitors charge. And but genuinely practicing that so it doesn't feel like something that comes up at the ends, that you're confidently, this is the value that we're adding.
Yes, and you share the value as well. I also would say from a nonverbal, when you get to that point, be very concise and hit the mark on your intonation to say, my fee is $5,000. It doesn't sound like you believe in that. My fee is $5,000. So the sound of those two, even if you take away my face, is sounding more confident. Or I charge my clients for this service, or you can repeat and say, for this, this, and this, the fee is this. So, and you pause there. You don't over explain, you don't excuse yourself, or you don't continue. I agree with you, Emma. You have to practice doing that and make sure that you sound the part too.
Yeah.
Kathy is saying feedback is a gift, and oftentimes it's MIA when it comes to a career search. It's definitely what you hear a lot, and a lot of our friends probably are asking for jobs or asking for promotions, and you have to, again, be confident in what you're sharing. Thank you, Kathy. Do you have some, I would say, war stories or success stories of someone and one of your founders that went in one direction and changed, and he or she changed their approach without changing the content?
Yeah, I think, and this comes down to practicing, right? You can practice all the questions that people are going to ask you, but someone might ask you a nuanced version of that. So it sounds different when you're first receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by having the practice behind you and then knowing your audience and having a couple of potential paths, you're able to flow more and use your intuition and lean into actually, what is this situation demanding? Have they asked, I don't know, challenging questions up front? And maybe you want to drop the pitch and go straight into let's have a Q&A session around this. I can see you have some really important questions that you want to ask. I can see that you've obviously already looked at my deck because you've got some great questions.
Great.
Let's put the pitch to the side and let's go straight in and have that Q&A, because it makes it really human. You've listened to the cues. And I think being flexible in your approach comes from practicing, and it comes from practicing the curveballs.
Q&A is so much more impromptu. The pitch is your pre-prepared set. That to me can be perfect. We see it all the time in the shows like Dragon's Den and in Shark Tank, where they're perfect in their pitch and they fall apart in Q&A because they haven't practiced that enough. In Q&A, do you ever have a chance to say, let me just show you how it works, or here's why we came up with this idea, or take 10 steps back? They'll say, who thought of this? What's the background of this? Telling the story of this is what I shared in the newsletter, is very helpful to getting the audience to go, okay, I get it. They can switch paths immediately sometimes.
Yeah. And your point in the newsletter of telling the story of how it came, ultimately people by people. Whenever we're relaying a story about someone else, or you're at a dinner party and you're sharing a story, it's always something memorable about somebody. Like maybe there's a hero in it or a protagonist, or rather than this big data dump at the beginning of a presentation, it's just so much more human and memorable.
Just saying, imagine you go to school and you have a problem that can help you. And that in the newsletter, I shared some information to help people brainstorm some of that. I left this part for the last piece because I want to embarrass my dear daughter who's coming in from New York City. She is the reason I met you, Emma. She is the young professional who saw a post you made on LinkedIn, gave it and showed it to me. And she goes, Mom, look at this. And to let everyone know, sorry, Melina, to let everyone know, Emma trains and coaches founders, and she tries to help female founders who are in minority. One of the things that she learned, she helps all founders, but she works specifically with female founders to try to up the number of women that are asking for funding. And in this specific case, Emma put a post up and said, that's it. I've had it. I'm creating a bias scorecard. Tell us about the bias scorecard, Emma.
Oh, and I love this. And thank you so much, Melina, for introducing us, because we've had some incredible discussions and topics today.
Your past friends.
Yeah. It it really started as a way of, if I'm going to be completely honest, I felt like I was not getting it. I'm like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with my pitch? Like, why is this coming up? And then when I started looking at the questions and going back through transcriptions of when my male co-founder was pitching, what was he asked? So I was like, and that happened in the beginning. I was like, I'm tracking everything, because if I don't track it, I can't measure it and I can't see the patterns.
Okay.
And it was really my way of figuring it out. I was pitching to VCs who were investing in enterprise SaaS. This was not my world. I had no previous experience pitching to sort of for institutional capital. Mm-hmm. The only way of me feeling like I had some form of control was to look at the data and try and learn from the data, rather than be maybe a bit, what I felt was like, am I being too emotional about this?
Are they peeking on me? Because
yeah, totally. That was honestly my first thought. But it wasn't. And I started noticing that I would be asked, hey, daughter's just popping in.
Right, you do.
Yeah.
my pleasure. The live was awesome. We're engaging our kids on this. It's good learning for everyone. Yeah. So this is the male counterpart that said, don't worry about the red lipstick. So you're walking into a room and you're starting to measure who gets what questions, and you're noticing what?
And I'm noticing that I'm being asked, well, in very obvious cases, I'm being asked who's picking my kids up from school. I'm being asked
the presentation.
Yeah, asked about my work-life balance with being a mother, like how do I manage it? Sometimes framed as a very like open, curious question, but really they want to know if my dedication is going to be to the business, which of course it is. And a couple of times asked if my husband was okay with this.
Stop. No. First of all, what did your business colleague do when you were asked this question?
Mortified, absolutely mortified on my behalf, and would often get quite defensive. He was like my sacrificial anode. Like, he was feeling everything, and I'm like, I'm just going to collect all the data because there's definitely going to be patterns in this.
Yeah.
And also what I started realizing was that actually I had the power to say no. Just because someone was willing to write a check, was that the type of person that I wanted involved in my business?
Right.
And the answer was no.
Right. And for all of the world listening, because this is going to stay on LinkedIn Live, maybe it's not a work-life balance question. Maybe the perception, or I would say the negative impression, comes from you have an accent. Maybe you're not the one to be teaching speaking to my students. Someone had asked me that, as where are you from? Or maybe you are older, or maybe you're younger. Think of all the different ways that people have impressions of you and the biases that may come up. And you found a way, based on the inappropriate questions, to give a scorecard so you would get points for the bad questions. In the post you mentioned 50 points if they asked for your work-life balance. I thought it was hilarious. Yes.
Then I would eliminate them from the process. It's like, actually, we don't, and I wouldn't often call it out directly. Like, if I had a moment with a one-on-one with a person, I would share how I felt that was maybe inappropriate. I never shared the names of people who asked me these things, because really it was for my own data-driven decisions that I wanted to know whose money and who was investing and buying equity in my business.
Right. And the bottom line is, you want to have respect or feel that you're valued, and you have the okay to walk away and say no. I wonder, since we have Emma for just a little bit longer, if you have any questions to drop her way about an ask or a question. Kathy again says, intrusive questioning is a lack of emotional intelligence from the very onset. Absolutely. But you're in that odd position of being the guest that is let in to make an ask, and it's delicate. You talked a lot about keeping a poker face or your smiling face, or continuing to give positive energy. And I know you told me on our pre-call that on the side, you may say, I would want to answer this question for you privately instead of in front of the group. Or maybe sometimes it would be inappropriate to answer the question in general, but you would not want their money, right? What is the one thing that you want everyone to know when it comes to asking? In your case, your founders are asking for money, asking for permission, asking for projects, asking for promotions, asking for a job.
Yeah. I think being really clear on what your ask is. Make it really clear. Don't kind of then say and justify it. So this is my ask and now this is my justification. Kind of have that like inner confidence where you genuinely believe you're going to be in that role, or you're suited for that role, or you're going to get the investment.
Right.
Make the ask really, really clear. And then there's one little trick. When I was working with an incredible professor, she was telling me that actually if you ask someone like a pre-question, so if you say, would you be willing to join me on my show, or would you be willing to have a conversation about this? You're actually setting the stage for potentially the conversation that you're going to have if it was, trying to encourage someone, rather than say, will you do this? Because a do is a very yes or no answer. But would you be willing to consider coming on my show, or would you be willing to consider discussing my salary, or what I'm being paid, or my role? So
but you wouldn't say, would you be willing to give me a raise? Because that's a much more direct question. Would you be willing to discussing my professional development or the next steps that you think I should take? Exactly. We coach a lot of our students. I just had one the other day that I helped him get 10,000 more on his sign-on bonus because he had heard that others got it. I know. And we've been cheering. So we got online. I teach a negotiation course, and he said, I'm living this. Can you help me? And it truly, he did his homework and knowing that others were getting this, and he was feeling so bad for asking, like I should be grateful for even getting this assignment bonus. And he said, I wouldn't want to leave any money on the table. And he did it in such a good way that they did not respond to him right away. They said, we need to check and come back to you, but he did get it. So I felt like I put my little stone on the pile of accomplishment that he built specifically.
Amazing.
So I have one last question for you on your founder that raised 2.5 million. And yes, #stronger, because we have our giveaway soon. The 2.5 million, was it a he or she? She. And what did she nail absolutely in order to get that check?
When we first started working together, probably one of the most intelligent women that I've met, and she was a scientist. So the one thing that we worked on a lot together was, what information do you need to give someone without going into the detail? Because if someone's let's stay high level, let's look at the story, because the minute you get into the weeds, you're even losing me. Like I'm lost. And particularly when you're asking for money, if an investor ever feels like they don't understand what you're building, or they feel a little bit stupid because they don't understand your subject matter expertise, no one's going to write you a check.
Right.
So actually what we crafted was more simplistic messages, with not to diminish what they were doing, just to make it very clear, less jargon, removing all the words that were jargon, all very scientific, making it really relatable, and that, anyone could understand it. And then also one of the things that we worked on, which was towards the end, was when a lot of requests were coming in for more information from their data room, so it's basically everything about the business, was to push back gently on some of them, because it was causing so much work for them, and they were still trying to run the business. But actually pushing back and saying, what you're looking for can be found in this document. It may not be formatted the way you want, because we were finding there was a bit of bias coming in there, that people would just throw more questions at them. But the information was already there. They maybe just hadn't sifted through it, or had been looking for it in that particular format.
Yeah. I love that. So in a way, they pushed back and said, we've organized it in this way. Maybe you can help us help you by making it, changing the way we plan it, we organize it. It sounds scientific and complicated. Always keep it simple. We always say that. Stay high level, keep it simple, be ready to answer questions. And that applies to all of that. And removing jargon, especially when the founders are very highly technical experts, and then they're going in front of the lay people that may have the money to do that. I love it. Emma, this applies to so many situations, and I'm very glad that our audience gets a chance to hear this from you. Shelby, are we ready to run our giveaway for all the people that were with us. You can think of any parting thoughts or words, Emma, in our must do this for everyone that is joined us here. We run this quickly.
Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Like mindset and self-belief is so powerful.
Karen, great. Karen, we're gonna send this in the mail to you, but we'll ask you your address first. Let's bring Emma back. Believe in yourself, because if you believe in yourself, it shows in nonverbals, in your intonation, in the competence and strength of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I used to have a poster in my office of a rock climber, and it said, believe in yourself. And it was a strong female rock climber. And I never took it with me when we moved, and I probably should go find it again, because that's exactly what you said.
I love it.
Great. Emma, thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for attending with us today. Have a wonderful evening with all of the work that you do and the maps of your beautiful country. And I know we will be in touch. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.